Welcome to Out with Dan, the podcast that spotlights and examines the voices of LGBTQ+ authors, characters, and our allies. Together, we lift our voices and we tell our stories. I'm Dan White. Join me as I chat with this week's author. And welcome back to Out with Dan. Today, I'm excited to talk to my friend and mentor, Nancy Cole Silverman, about A Spy in Saigon. This book is so magnificent, Nancy. This is the fourth one in the Kat Lawson series. Is that correct?
Yes, that's true. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Can you give the audience an idea of what The Navigator's Daughter, which is the first Kat Lawson series, where the inspiration for that came from?
You know, the first in the series, and to tell you the truth, when I started this series, I had no idea where I was going to go. I had finished a contract with another publisher, and I was looking around for where to go. And at the time, I was going back and forth to Arizona, where my father was living with my mom, and he was getting older and very ill. And I was going through his files, and he had been a Navigator bombardier. And he had been shot down in the Second World War as he was bombing Linz, Austria. And he limped the plane, this B-24, into Hungary and then bailed out and was missing, MIA. Wow. So he said, I always wish you'd be able to go back to Hungary and find the people that rescued me, the patriots, the underground movement that rescued me from behind the Russian lines, and thank them, because there were families there. And my dad lived in a house on 22 Beethoven Street. Matter of fact, that's really what I wanted to call that book, was 22 Beethoven Street. But then I dithered back and forth and thought it didn't really explain it enough. And when he was there, he met a lot of patriots who kind of hid him and got him back to Bucharest, where he flew back to Italy, where he had been stationed, and flew another 13 missions. And wow. 50% of those young men, and they were 20, 21 years old, didn't come back. An interesting story, the Navigator didn't even have his driver's license. And at the end of the war, his father had to take him to the DMV and co-sign for him.
Wow.
To get his driver's license.
Isn't that's sort of I think that's a big deal. You know, I think that, you know, hearing you tell that, I'm like, wow, he could fly a plane and bomb places, but he didn't have a driver's license.
No driver's license.
For an automobile, I'm like, good heavens to Betsy.
Yeah. And they were all such young men, and they all came to call. You know, once Pearl Harbor had been bombed, they were signing up, just ready. I'm ready to go and fight this war. And they did. And and many of those, 50% of those in those B-24s never came back. Wow. So my father did come back, or I wouldn't be here and you would have this story. But I felt it was a story that was worth telling. And it opened the door for a lot of these stories, which my protagonist, Kat Lawson, was kind of privy to, and started the whole series that way.
So now give us a setup for what A Spy in Saigon is about.
Okay, so A Spy in Saigon, and I got to tell you, I never would have thought I would have been writing these books. If you had asked me in fourth grade when I was writing some mystery contest with my fourth grade class, I never would have really thought I would be an author. I mean, I wanted to write, but I went into journalism and worked as a journalist, and then worked in marketing and advertising and promotion and for radio and talk radio stations in LA. I never thought I'd get back to this. But I did when I retired from radio. And I had been running a talk radio station, and I retired, and I thought, you know, now I can make it up. And I will tell you, I never could make it up when I was on the street.
Thank goodness. I mean, you could today, but you couldn't back when we were in journalism. You had to tell the facts. Today, their facts are out the window. But
you know, there's alternative facts, and there were no alternative facts. So you would have been bounced out of class and never allowed back into school again. But I began writing the Kat Lawson series, and that led from Navigator's Daughter, ran to Passport to Spy, where Kat is picked up by the FBI because of something she's uncovered in The Navigator's Daughter, the first series, that the FBI takes an interest in her. And she's basically lost her job. This is a time when women were just coming into their own as far as jobs and opportunity. And she had been working very hard as an investigative reporter for a newspaper in her hometown in Phoenix. It was the Arizona Gazette, the Phoenix Gazette. And she had working late nights and in a bad marriage, and ended up in an office romance that ended up in her being exited from the newspaper and her boss being promoted. That
Huh.
happened.
It does happen.
Guess what, girls?
Unfortunately, it happens all too
That's the way it
often.
went back then. And unfortunately, because the two papers were owned by the same company, she couldn't get another job at the other paper in town. And so the FBI approaches her and says, you're a good journalist, and you've brought back with you some information from Hungary, which we found interesting based upon the first book. And they said, we'd like to see if you might work for us. And she says, well, I'm not an agent. I can't be an agent. I don't want to do that. And they said, no. We need a journalist. We have a publication. It's a travel publication. And you'll go on assignment because it makes sense that you would be in certain parts of the world doing editorials and feature writing. And while you're there, you'll just drop a package or receive a message, nothing more. You will know nothing about who is involved in this. All you'll know is that message. If you're ever stopped, you go, I don't know. I met a handsome man in the bar and I said, meet me in St. Louis or something like that, which was a message she would have been given, which meant something to him, but obviously not to her. So that was the second, and that was a whole journey in itself. And then the third was Murder on the Med. And then the fourth, the one we're talking about tonight, is A Spy in Saigon. And A Spy in Saigon was based, again, pulling back from military history, my own personal experience. I was an Air Force wife during the Vietnam War. Again, something way, way far away. What was that? Better than 50 years ago now. We had the 50th year anniversary of the end of that war not long ago, which incidentally in Vietnam is called the American War, not the Vietnam War.
Oh, right. There you go.
Which makes sense, right? So I thought, well, I needed a country to go to because in each country she's assigned to go for a feature article, and the years lined up right because this was about the year in the late 90s and Vietnam was opening up to economics and business and so forth. And so I thought, well, this is great, and she'll be assigned to go there. And because child trafficking is a big issue in that part of the world, from the Southeast Asian countries and so forth, war orphans and so forth, she is there to pass money and passports on to someone who wants out, who's going to shut this trafficking system down. But that goes awry, as it would have to, because you can't have a protagonist walk in and deliver a message and have everything go.
Give the message and be done and say, okay, this is page 5. We're done. Bye, y'all. Come back to the next.
That would work.
No, I don't think so.
And actually, this subject, again, I was scratching my head thinking, what am I going to do with this? I had forgotten I had any connection to Vietnam at all. When I was in high school, my ex-husband had been in the Air Force, and we had a lot of friends who were in Vietnam, and that was just way, way behind me. And then years later, my current husband, Bruce, and I had gone to Vietnam on a tour. And when we were coming back through Heathrow Airport, I remember seeing a little Asian girl, Middle Eastern Asian girl. She couldn't have been more than 4 or 5. And I think I told you this the other day. She was dressed in a red sequin dress with little white frilly panties and black patent leather shoes. And she was with 2 older men. And it just gave me the creeps. I thought, that is not her father. That's not an uncle. She is being trafficked. And by the time I found the security guard, she was gone. And I thought, I can't stop that, but I can tell that story. And so that was the theme of why Kat is sent to Saigon, which at that time in history, by the way, is Ho Chi Minh City. So she goes to Ho Chi Minh City, and she is to deliver this package, and things go terribly wrong from the very beginning. And you are, I hope, as a reader, instantly pulled into it for that reason.
Well, you are, Nancy. I think that you're a master storyteller in that because for all, transparency, Nancy and I are friends in real life. We go to lunch together. Nancy's a mentor. She's someone that I respect a lot. And so we talked about this story before it was published. But I had such fun reading it because I had said to Nancy said, well, I can tell you some things about it, but I don't want to ruin it for you. And I tell everyone the same thing, whether it's a book or a movie. If I like it, I'm going to read it, watch it. It doesn't matter if I already know what's going to happen. So I knew some of what was going to happen, but I was surprised because what you did was so magical in the fact that you gave me a fully formed character in Kat Lawson, someone that I could hear her voice clearly. I could see her, I could feel her, I could be with her. And that's the thing that I loved about this. It was so wonderfully written.
Oh, well, thank you very much. This story I struggled with because uh, in many respects, it's part of my early life. I got married in college, right out of college. I had my BS and my MRS degree within the same week, which back when I was married, that was what you did. And my ex was in the Air Force and he got orders right away. So a lot of young girls ran off to Vegas and got married because, there wasn't time and there was a war going on and it wasn't a popular war. And I really wanted to share that because so often, you get people who say, well, where were you during the war? Were you protesting? What were you doing? And you think, when you were an Air Force wife, you didn't dare because
No.
the person you loved was on the line. And they would be sent back and forth for temporary duty flying, whether or not they needed to be there or not. And, their rankings, when you're an Air Force officer's wife, their rankings were how involved were you in the community? I don't know, because I'm certainly not involved in that today, if that's still a way, but it certainly was back then, and that you were a representative of your husband. And so you had to be very careful what you did. And it was a very difficult time. And you moved from one base to another, and you needed to get a job. And one of the things I hoped was for people to understand that the military, these are our people. These are our sons and daughters going off and fighting around the world. And they're in one part of the world, and then they're moved across the country to another part of the world. And the wives or the spouses, the significant others have to take up jobs of some kind to help supplement the income, because the incomes aren't that big and cost of living has gone up. And the public did not accept. I mean, when I first was moving and traveling around the country, the public looked at me like, well, who are you? And you're not one of us. And it was kind of down the nose look. And, yet our young men, our brothers or sisters or fathers and sons, they were sacrificing their lives.
Their lives, that's right.
When these families were moved around, they couldn't stay where they had come from. They couldn't stay on the base they had come from. So when I was young, we were stationed on a base, and then my ex would get his orders and we would have to move out. And if he was going overseas or abroad and I couldn't go with him, if it was an unaccompanied tour, I had to move back to my parents' house or find a place. And so then you join a group called Waiting Wives. And so this book was really an expose a little bit about that life as you go back and forth between Pat's current life as an investigative reporter and going back to what her early life was as an Air Force wife, in which she's buried the past and kind of forgotten about it. But now she's assigned a very serious mission to deliver this package to this man who wants to get out of this child trafficking thing. And she's realizing all these memories of Vietnam where she never had been, but are coming back to her. And it comes back to her in a very unusual way throughout the book.
It does. So one of the things that I noticed that in this, I think all good mysteries are predicated on secrets and lies. I mean, because those are the things that we all humans experience. Let's say you and I are married and I keep a secret from you, that will figure out where we go. And that is something that I felt like you did such a great job with. You brought in all these secrets and lies throughout the entire book that Kat is seeing, oh, well, that's not quite exactly as I thought it was. And I remember when she first gets to Saigon, she meets Davy Crockett, who is a colorful character, and I love Davy. I might have been or known a couple of Davies in my life. So,
I think we've all known a Davy Crockett or two, but
yeah.
I've loved writing about him. But he was really fierce. It was no funny business, and he could be charming. And he could be deadly.
Right. He could be charming, so he thought anyway. But I think anyone who reads this is going to cringe at Davy, because especially if it's a woman reading this, because every woman knows this Davy Crockett.
Yeah. You're right. He thinks he's charming, but he could be awful. Yeah. For every woman who ever ran into a Davy Crockett, it was like, oh, take me away.
Right. It's like you can you don't even have to open your eyes. You can feel them across the room. So, but I did like the fact that you made him what is the word I'm looking for? You made him a patriot, a true patriot.
He was
And
committed to the cause
he was committed to the cause. I think
at
that's a
all
better way.
costs.
That's better than saying patriot. You know, it was he was convicted in his way of life. And I liked that, Nancy. I really thought you did such a great job with that.
Oh, thank you. I think what's interesting and what is, as a writer, what I always try to find is the conflict that my protagonist is going to have internally. Because
Yeah.
with every, and it will be different with every book, you know, we all face something internally that we are at conflict with. And it's those things, oh gosh, I don't even want to talk about this, but it's something that I got to hide, but I can't face. And yet we conflict with it. And when we can get to present that on the page in our character's innermost thoughts, our readers will connect with that because they will say, oh yeah, I've had that too. You know, and that's what you want. And so, you know, you try for conflict. There's conflict with yourself, there's conflict with nature, and there's conflict with your fellow man. And those have to play out in every book. I remember in high school when I first knew I wanted to be a writer. And funny story, I mean, I got an A in my English class, not because I deserved it, because I probably couldn't read and punctuate very well, but I memorized Dorothy, oh gosh, what was it? Can't remember the dance, Dorothy Parker's dance, the dance.
Yes. Yes.
And if you could deliver that, you got an A plus, and I did. And the teacher says, you so don't deserve an A plus, but you did it just really well.
Well, so what the teacher didn't know is that you were going to be an actor in your radio life, in your print journalism, and you delivered. And so that's
You never know where life's going to lead you, you know? So it was good.
100%. 100%. I love that. So, Sophie Sophie is Kat's handler, so to speak.
Right. Right.
Sophie's the one that assigns Kat's assignments.
Mm-hmm.
So I almost hate Sophie. Was that intentional on your part?
Well, it's a love-hate relationship because Sophie's gotten older and she used to be in the field and she was an art historian, and her big thing was to go around the world and help uncover, you know, stolen art and repatriate it. And, you know, all of a sudden she's gotten old, and here comes Kat, who is, again, this is conflict, you know, a younger woman in her prime of life, athletic, good looking. She can be her hands and feet in the field, and, you know, she can be darling and angry and everything else. And Sophie is stuck in an office as she is the handler. She's the eyes and brains who can direct her. And Carol and Kat on her part is kind of like, I'm in the field, honey. Let me show you what I need to do. So there's constant conflict between these two because she says, I know you want to have that done, but that ain't happening here because this is not going to go down that way. So there's conflict there too. Which is good because it's an ageism thing. And yet at the very end of the day, there's a deep respect, but boy, it doesn't come easily.
And I really celebrate that, Nancy. You know, one of the things about that dynamic was that I felt like Kat was given an opportunity and yet held at such a standard that no one else would be held to, if that makes sense. You know, I felt like Kat was doing the best she could with the given circumstances, and Sophie, while it was all going on, was always berating her because
Right.
Sophie knew better. While
Well,
Kat,
Sophie was a real agent. Sophie had been there, and Kat is a contractor. She's delivered, and of course, because she flubs up so often, and she seems to attract trouble, and she seems to always go beyond what she really needs to do. And in this case, you know, when she tries to make the delivery of an envelope, she actually walks out of the jewelry store with a very valuable piece of art, which could cost her life. And it's like, Sophie is, you got to be kidding. How would you do that? You know? So there's a little humor in there.
yes.
This is not a dark mystery. There is no sex on the page. There's no killing on the page. No, my background was radio. And so, you know, by the time I would come across a story, that was done. It was reporting the facts and so forth. So I don't deal with that, but I like to have a lot of humor and a lot of just kind of little, you know, back and forth between my characters.
So I will say that when I was thinking about where me personally, as a reader, would put your book, I would say an international spy thriller. Um, and while you don't have blood on the page, there's murder
Mm-hmm.
and there are deaths. And I felt very comfortable with that. So because we're friends, I'm a very dark person. So I don't care. I don't care if you beat somebody over the head with an axe and I see it. That doesn't bother me as a reader. But I will say that I thought you gave us all kinds of conflict, murder, and mystery, and such a great resolution. And I will say, I'm not going to give this away. I'm going to dance really close to it. So something happens to Kat in this book that I don't think happened. Well, I know it didn't happen in the first three.
Mm-hmm.
This is a game changer for Kat. I don't know what book number 5 is going to be, but book number 4 is a game changer. Kat's life at the beginning of the book is not Kat's life at the ending of the book. And I will say that you did that with such aplomb. And I loved the way you ended it, because I was a little afraid as I was reading, as I am always trying to figure out what's going to happen next. I thought, oh Lord, I hope this isn't going to end pretty.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't end pretty, but it ended satisfyingly.
I think it was realistic.
I thought it was as well, Nancy.
I wanted to be true to, oh boy, I really struggled with this because some of the stories in here are true. I did have friends who were shot down and who didn't come home, and some that did. And I knew a lot of the wives. They were my friends. And I wanted to be true to, I had to be true to the story and to their experiences. And I couldn't just gussy it up and pretend like everything was fine. That war didn't end with everything fine. There were people who never came home. So I needed to be, well, she was dealing with this very difficult situation of trying to rescue these children and get them out and close this avenue of sex trading, which was one of the many. There was another issue there that dealt with her personal life, and I needed to make sure that it wasn't just a pretty ending, but it was also in many ways a freeing time for her.
Totally agree.
Set things that had disrupted her life and explain a little bit why she's such a chance taker. Why she's so angry. She's a chance taker. She does things that most people would say, I don't think I'll do that. And she would take assignments and do things. And it was, that's typical when people have been through difficult things in their life and they feel that they should punish themselves because they're the survivor of this, type of deal. And I wanted that to come out a little bit. So when we go into the 5th book, she is hot to trot.
All right. So can you tell us where the 5th book is set, or should we ask the audience if they'd like to vote on it?
I'd love anybody to vote on it because I'm very curious where they
I think so too, because I already know where I want it to be set. So when we're at lunch next time, I'm going to tell you, if not book 5, book 6 or 7 or 8 or wherever.
Okay,
I'm going to tell you where I want it set because it's a personal favorite of mine. So
I can't wait to hear. I can't wait to hear.
Nancy, this book is so wonderful. Again, it's A Spy in Saigon.
And I've got one. You've got the advanced
reader's copy. Yeah. That's right. You have the. I love the picture of this as well.
Oh, I'm glad you do. Yeah, it's really interesting because I actually have been to all the countries that I write about. And that was fun. And the first time I flew into Vietnam, you fly into the airport and you go through immigration and so forth. I think it's pretty much the same as anything. And then you walk through the glass doors and it's like a beehive of people at you. It is just so busy and everything is constant movement. And I mean, I just was not prepared for this. And so there's a scene in the first part of the book where she has to go across the street. And it's like, I can't do this because there's no stop signs. There are no lights. And they tell you just walk out into traffic. And she did exactly what I did. I walked out and go, help me!
I love that.
And so the two characters that are her kind of, eventually she works a lot with them. Come and rescue her on these little rickshaws and put her in. And I remember I jumped into that rickshaw. I would have paid that man $1 million to get me out of that traffic circle. I was so frightened. So those were good kind of personalities that were helpful to the development of the book.
Well, and I think that when we have, I think the universe brings us these things to make us more aware. I mean, honestly, had you not been in that situation, you could never have written that, Nancy.
Oh,
So
I couldn't.
when you go into a traffic circle and you're about to be run over, all of a sudden life gets real.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. It's just so all my experiences, the food, the theater, the going through the tunnels. I actually crawled through the tunnels.
Oh, wow.
That was scary as can be because I'm a tall woman, I'm 5'10", and the Vietnamese are very short, small, compact people, and so immediately claustrophobic, and there's no light, and the tunnels play a big history into how the North Vietnamese won that war. And as I said, before we started, I said, they don't call it the American War, they call it the Vietnamese War. So all of the research and going into those tunnels and then going to the cafes and going to the hotels where so much of the American life was before the war ended, and her flashbacks, and still was, because these were all being modernized. They were now big glass structures and so forth. This was all part of, it was very easy to kind of blend that history together because so much of it was still there from the war that she could realize that she was experiencing from years before.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for joining me, Nancy. This has been so much fun.
Oh, thank you so much, Dan. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Out with Dan. You can find more information about this podcast and its host at OutWithDan.com, on Twitter at OutWithDan, and on Instagram and Facebook at GoOutWithDan. This podcast is hosted by Authors on the Air Global Radio Network, and the theme music is provided by bensound.com. Join us again soon for the next episode of Out with Dan.